There's something that happens to many of us when we awaken to quantum shifting. We get very excited by the possibilities and the potentials. We want to explore. We want to practice. And then we doubt everything. What happens? There is a process of evolution that the mind has to wrestle with. And for a period of time, when you are viewing the world from your sensory organs and your embodied form, whatever that might happen to be, and not all of you are of human origin, but most of you are, you are naturally going to process the bits of data in a particular sequence and fashion. Your biological machinery is designed to bootstrap you into a linear existence. You have little functions in your nervous system that ping the clock and ping your spatial location, like an unconscious program running on your behalf. And so you're always keeping track of space and time. And in doing so, you create a linear map. And the way that your machinery computes reality, for those of you coming from materialistic, reductionistic, binary societies, is that you will naturally perceive that there is only one world, one dimension, and you fluidly move through it. As you move through space and time, and over the course of your life, your single life, you will have many beautiful and trying experiences, and some utterly forgettable and mundane, and you will pass. And what happens after that is perhaps still up for debate, or not, depending on your framework. But you will have another experience. And then what? For many of you, you will go on to another side. Others will go on to another life. And others will just simply cease to exist, lost in the ether as fragments of consciousness, disintegrated, detached from all memory and all self, perhaps even in a transcendental bliss-like experience with no concept of I, just all that is, a peaceful reunion back home, into wholeness, into completion, devoid of any pain or sadness, or so they say. And when you come from worlds like this, you receive constant indoctrination. You have one life. You better make it good. One existence. And so what happens is you struggle at first, wondering if it's you, wondering if your mind is going, if there's something wrong, if you need to go to a psychiatrist or a medical professional. And I'm not here to tell you whether or not you do. But I observe that when people start to really get into the quantum shifting framework, especially when they are in stage 1, the liftoff phase, they're in between worlds. They're in between the ways of perceiving reality, stuck between two frameworks. There's this vacillation effect which occurs. And this is wibble wobble that you see people go through in what I would argue would be any life event, even outside of quantum shifting. A major divorce, breakup, change, loss, or something radical happening to them, where at first there's shock or disbelief. Even major upgrades to the persona and the identity constructs. You'll see this going back and forth. High schoolers going away for college can see this too. Almost like they're turning into a different person when they go to college, but when they go back home, they slip back into the old routine. They slip back into the parts of themselves that feels all too familiar. And likewise, when you really start to expand your consciousness into quantum shifting, there's this similar process of vacillating back and forth. This is the best time to listen to content like this, because the question that you're trying to answer, the fundamental truth that you're grappling with is it actually real? And some days you're going to think yes, and at first, most days you're going to think no. And as that vacillation effect continues, more and more days are going to be spent in the, wow, this is really real. Then, what do I do with it? That's when you enter into phase 2, the reality interrogation phase. And I talk about that more in my EC by Dr. C private quantum shifting playlist. Link is in the description. But essentially it is, okay, what worlds have I queued up around me? And I like to deconstruct these, at least in my one-on-one coaching work, where we identify the patterns and the themes and the core wounds that have pervaded your existence throughout your entire lifetime. Because we can find your karmic loops quite easily by looking at your manifested outcomes. And when we understand where the challenges and the wounds have been, we understand perhaps where the lessons are begging to be witnessed, the underlying truths that are waiting to be discovered. And this is powerful because when you enter into phase 2, the reality interrogation phase, you're trying to identify and assess what is most probabilistically going to manifest based on today's persona versus where I think I'd like to go. And that today's persona versus the where I think I'd like to go, and the delta of that change or the gap, we call this closing the gap, that is going to communicate something very important to you, which is if the multiverse has all probabilities of worlds and lifelines in existence operating simultaneously, and the difference between you in today's moment and the you in a desired outcome is a shift or a change, then how do you need to shift and change to get to different outcomes? Because I can tell you that the version of you today has already queued up manifestations. There are literally fractals upon fractals surrounding you, waiting for you to unfurl them, waiting for you to say yes. Some of them you already have said yes, even complicitly. For others, you don't even know what's around you. And so the reality interrogation phase is all about exploring the most immediate, readily available timelines and worlds that are waiting for you. I like to think of it as an energetic cords attached to your auric field. You will have tethers, some stronger than others. And when you embark on those co-creations with other people who are tethered to you energetically through the form of karmic bonds or soul contracts, or even just ordinary three-dimensional contracts written by the letter of the law, without energetics, but of the mind and of the flesh and of time and space, what's going to happen is that the strongest ones will dominate your world. You will literally, like a portal, be co-creating a shared reality with other people. And just like in a collective, we all have our individual realities that we have co-creations with other individuals. We also have collective realities and subcultures and groups and neighborhoods and communities. These are all shared worlds existing as a whole. Worlds upon worlds. And when you understand that, when you understand how energy itself is a binding force, the magnetism which preferentially causes you to reply to somebody's messages but not to somebody else's, then you understand why certain outcomes and events happen in your life. Because let's just take a tragic example. If you are dead set on living through trauma-like experiences, you will preferentially say yes to those inviting you to trauma. Why? Why choose the trauma stories over the other stories? I hear sometimes from people, they say, well, the healthy ones are not attracted to me. And I've often wondered if that's really true, or if that's a story that person tells themselves. And perhaps they themselves ignore all the times that they've dropped the cords or the threads or the conversations with those who were more peaceful, those who respected them out of the gate, who were willing to wait for them for the right time, and chose those that were competitive or possessive, who offered more of a roller coaster, an addiction type of experience, who maybe manifested back some deep wound of unworthiness that person subconsciously identified with. Choosing not the people that said you're worthy as you are, come as you are, and instead choosing those that are unavailable to prove their worth to those that are disengaging or running away. When we see how we energetically bond to others and maintain those bonds, we start to put ourselves in the lotus of control, seeing ourselves as the vehicle for manifestation and our choice as the road to sovereignty. Because when we choose, we are saying yes to manifestations. We even choose sometimes when we don't say yes or no, but we allow people in our lives to dream about manifested worlds with us that we know that we have no intention of participating in. And this is especially for listeners 35, 75, and 17. When we don't use the power of no, we don't use boundaries, we clog up our field because we allow those around us to energetically tie themselves to us. And let's say we participate in calling them on the phone and maintaining a friendship, and we are aware that the person on the other line is wanting more from us than we ever intend on giving. And we let them live in that fantasy and that illusion, bypassing any personal responsibility, by not dispelling that illusion. We are doing great disservice, not only to that person, but to ourselves. It seems harmless to let somebody live in a state of desire for us that we have no intention on materializing. Effectively catfishing them and future faking. I'm not saying that any of those listeners are doing that. I was reminded of a literal episode on Catfish where this happened for decades, where somebody did this exact thing, maintained an illusion of a relationship in a completely disingenuous way. And for listener 17, if you are my client, I would ask you if there was something about your shadow self that secretly needed people around you, that wanted something from you, that you had no desire to give, but the very act of them wanting and desiring it made you feel something important inside, something that you lacked on your own. Perhaps a sense of attractiveness, a sense of worth, a sense of security. By keeping people on the line, you actually bolster a fragile self-esteem, craving validation that should come from within if you were to really do the shadow work. And what happens is that you sabotage relationships. Because if you meet somebody that is energetically attuned or even just intuitive, they're going to feel that something is amiss with those connections, even if you never tell them. They're going to sense it, they're going to know it, and maybe that's their lesson, to trust themselves, even when on the surface it appears to just be an ordinary friendship, or so you say. And you lose opportunities. You lose something significant that I can't quite put my finger on for you entirely. And so when you don't say no, it seems harmless, but it actually can cause great harm unknowingly. And this is what karmic loops are about, and karmic lessons, because eventually we learn this on the spiritual awakening journey, that as creators, we are sovereign beings. We do have free will, and nobody has a right to impose their world on us, to impose their preferences. We can agree to take somebody's rules and somebody's modes of behavior or standard operating procedures. We can agree to internalize those. And I have another story where somebody did this, but then blamed it on the patriarchy for oppressing them, for repressing their sexuality. And beautiful, awakening soul that created an entire business on freeing themselves from this invisible they who was oppressing them, when ultimately, from my perspective, it was them repressing themselves. Because at least the old white men that I knew didn't know her and would have loved for her to be as sexually free as she wanted to be. They would have loved it. But she was carrying this wound from her upbringing, from her culture, from her religion, that told her to be herself, her full self, was wrong. And I believe she correctly identified the need to break out of that and to reclaim her voice, her sovereignty, her sensuality, her passion, her conviction. But from my perspective, the fight was within. And it came from standing up to the people who were supposed to be loving her without judgment. That's just through the eyes of a coach that helps people with shadow work patterns. When we understand how we choose to stay silent, to stay in suffering, to stay in repression, persecution, when we are afraid of loss, losing the old that we've outgrown in particular, we stay small and we stay quiet, and by design our manifested realities impose their restrictions on us because ultimately we said yes, and we preferentially chose those worlds to live out. My personal belief is to overcome, but I'm somebody that embraces sovereignty and free will and creation and manifestation. And I'm also somebody who shifted worlds and found herself stuck in nightmare, persecution story after persecution story, wondering, how did I get here? How did I open up to this magical experience only to find myself in this repeating series of programs, simulated realities seemingly, and experiences that were looping, all with me in the same position of being oppressed. But the characters changed, the names changed, the groups changed, the entities changed, and yet the position and the dynamics were exactly the same. How does that work? So I rewrote the simulation. And to do that required closing the gap, understanding who I was in that present moment versus who I needed to be to fully embody that shift, to see it crystallized in my manifested reality required me to speak up, required me to protect myself, required me to say no, and a whole host of other upgrades. And most importantly, it required me to not be afraid and to take total personal responsibility for what I had preferentially created. If there was a line of worlds, 9 out of 10 of those I spent my energy engaging in that were leading to destitution, impoverishment, prosecution and persecution, unfairly, unjustly. And one of those was a hand that said, "You're enough the way that you are. You're enough." And I ignored that one. How do you think my worlds would have manifested? Exactly. It's not hard. It's actually very simple when you see the mechanics and the underlying dynamics where you attend to grows, and it shows. So when we have parallel worlds coming into view, and you are interrogating the environment, and you're trying to understand what is the most likely outcome, what is the most probable existence that is waiting to be manifested, that's when you can step into stage 3, the quantum mastery phase. And this is where you decide, if that doesn't work for me, how do I confront it head on? For me, I did the Midas touch. I introduced foes to each other. And I finally found my voice, and my power, and all of the strength inside me to look them dead in the eyes and say, no. And that was the only way for me personally that I could clear the path to actually encounter what I wanted to encounter, what I wanted to manifest. And when you understand the principles of manifestation and your karmic duty and the obstacles and the delays that are in the way, you understand how you must proceed. But if you fail at intuiting in your ordinary 3D existence, when you're walking down a dark alley and you can't tell if somebody that's coming towards you is going to harm you, and I don't mean overgeneralizing and just assuming that everybody wants to harm you. That's not intuition. That's fear. You have to use discernment. And sometimes you might not see it right away, and that's okay. You might need them to get 2 steps away from you before you recognize it. But that counts. We still count that. Remember, self-correction, not perfection. And the next time you're going to be even faster at it. It's going to be 5 steps and then 10 steps. And you're going to pattern recognition your way into the correct discernment. But if you struggle with that, how on earth are you going to struggle? Or how on earth are you going to encounter a reality shifting event and know if you're really safe or not? Because for a while, your intuition is the only compass that you have. You cannot just decide that you've awoken into quantum shifting, that you're going to turn yourself into a mermaid and live in the Atlantic Ocean and be there next Monday. You have to understand, what worlds are you tethered to? What is your baseline reality? What is the most probable outcome based on every moment leading up to the present one, assuming that you're still tethered to linear space-time, and many of you are. So every moment preceding influences this one until you break away from that. But if you're still in the liftoff phase, you're not quite there yet. That's more in the quantum mastery phase. So when your intuition guides you, it allows you to feel out where you're at. And when you do the mindset work and you do the self-examination, you deeply understand your locus of control. The common denominator in all of your manifestations is you. And when you understand that you as a sovereign, free being are choosing every second to engage, to say yes, it becomes pure freedom for you.